Today at 6, by night and now by day, UK temperature records tumble in the heatwave. London Fire Brigade declares a major incident after several heatwave-linked fires break out across the capital.
A number of the calls that we've been dealing with today have been wildfires or grass fires in particular, where the ground has been tinderbox dry as a result of the weather that we've experienced.
Scotland sees a new temperature record, 34.8 degrees centigrade, and in all 29 places across England have broken the previous UK record. With soaring temperatures comes travel disruption. Major stations have been shut down and several lines suspended. We'll be finding out how people have been coping, also on the programme. Public sector pay awards have been announced, rises for NHS staff and other public sector workers, but unions say it's not enough to cope with inflation. 3 left in the race to be the next Prime Minister after Kemi Badenoch fails to make the cut in the latest round of Tory MPs' votes.
And coming up on the BBC News Channel, the temperatures rising for the Euros favourites. The Lionesses might have beaten the Heat by tomorrow, but can they overcome Spain to make the semi-finals?
Hello and welcome to the BBC's News at 6. The predictions were spot on. This has been the hottest day recorded in the UK. In Coningsby in Lincolnshire, the thermometer hit 40.3 degrees centigrade. In fact, 29 places across England have broken the old record, which was 38.7 degrees. Scotland has experienced its hottest day on record, with the temperature reaching 34.8 degrees centigrade in Charterhall in the Scottish Borders. And it's not just daytime temperatures we're talking about. Provisional figures show last night was also the warmest on record. That was in Emily Moor in West Yorkshire, where it reached 25.9 degrees centigrade. That was overnight. Even before noon today, a new UK temperature record was set, 39.1 degrees in Charlwood, and that's in Surrey. But that record didn't last long. It was broken about an hour later at London Heathrow, where 40.2 degrees was recorded. And then later in the afternoon, another record, Coningsby in Lincolnshire, hit that 40.3 degrees. So that's a timeline of a day that has not only broken records, but brought the climate crisis to our doorsteps. More on that later, but first to the east of the capital, where the London Fire Brigade has declared a major incident. Our correspondent Daniel Sanford reports.
As weather thermometers breached the 40 degrees mark for the first time in Britain, London was burning. This was Wennington in the far east of the capital, just inside the M25. A fire in a parched area of grass was fanned by a stiff southerly breeze and engulfed houses on the edge of the village. As units rushed to the scene and firemen tried to douse the flames, panicked horses could be heard whinnying in the fields. Just across the Thames in Dartford, one of the other fires in and around London was burning fiercely on Heathland beside the A2. The fires were burning north of the capital too, in Milton Keynes, where a fire spread to the Kiddie Carew Day nursery, who said all the children and staff were safely evacuated. But the nursery itself and several homes were destroyed. In Norfolk, a fierce blaze was burning at Snettisham Coastal Park, and there were concerns about a nearby campsite. The heat has peaked today and it should be cooler tomorrow, but the tinder-dry grassland across England and Wales will remain a problem. People are being asked to be very careful and not to use barbecues outside their gardens. Here in Wennington, it's not quite clear what the scale of the destruction is yet. People are talking about 3 or possibly as many as 8 homes having been destroyed. Today we saw the stark reality of what it's like to live in a country where temperatures reach as high as the high 30s and even the low 40s. It means that grass becomes incredibly dry. Small things can start fires. Some residents think the fire here was started by a compost heap which overheated. Around here people are rushing to get horses off the fields in case the fire spreads. And of course it wasn't just in London, that was spreading in other parts of the south and east of England. And although the heat will reduce through the course of the next few hours, there are concerns that the conditions for fires have now been laid. The grass is incredibly dry, the temperature will remain high, and the fire brigade are asking people to be incredibly careful about fire, incredibly careful about litter, making sure they're not leaving anything like glass, which could become a magnifying glass and set afire, and of course not to use barbecues outside people's gardens. That is a very, very strong message coming through from the fire brigade today.
Daniel, thank you very much. Now, it's like a glimpse into our climate crisis future. Through the day, there's been a growing number of reports of wildfires, infrastructure failures, and a rise in calls to the emergency services today. The Met Office says we could experience a heat wave like this every 3 years. Here's our climate editor, Justin Rowlatt.
Well, I'm at the Botanic Garden in Cambridge. It was here in July 2019 when the previous record temperature was recorded. Well, that has been smashed and in dramatic style. It's an important milestone, but it is no surprise. Climate scientists have been warning for years that the UK would see new record temperatures. And the reason is very simple. The greenhouse gases we create when we burn fossil fuels trap heat in the atmosphere and have been driving up global temperatures. The temperature records started tumbling before midday today. The 39.1 degrees recorded at Charlwood near Gatwick Airport was a warning of things to come. Heat builds during the course of the day, and it certainly did that today. Within an hour, another record had been set, 40.2 degrees at Heathrow. By mid-afternoon, Coningsby in Lincolnshire had edged ahead, recording a temperature of 40.3 Celsius. A total of 5 weather stations had now recorded temperatures over 40 degrees. And there was a new record for Scotland too, beating the previous high set back in 2003.
We've been beating records by 1.5, 2 degrees, and really quite an extensive region of over 35 degrees. And this is really unusual. These are high temperatures over a broad area in England, so quite surprising.
Just look how today's temperatures compared to previous records. In 1976, it peaked just shy of 36 degrees. It was 27 years before that record was broken. 16 years after that, it hit 38.7 Celsius. Just 3 years later, and we've got today's new record. Who would have thought over 40 degrees in the UK? And it isn't just getting hotter. Years ago, temperatures would only reach peaks like this in the far south. But look how these high temperatures are moving north and west across the country. The heat is getting more intense and it is spreading. Proof, says the Prime Minister, that cutting emissions is the right thing to do.
With temperatures setting records in this country, who can doubt that we were right to be the first major economy to go for net zero? If we're going to protect our planet and if we're going to do the right thing to tackle global warming, it's essential that we set that lead.
It was too hot for tourists in Cambridge today. Those brave enough to take to the river brought their own shelter, and they needed it. But today, climate scientists were warning dangerous temperatures like this will be part of a normal British summer as global warming continues, and we need to prepare for it. King's College, the iconic heart of Cambridge, was empty today. The only sensible place to be was in the shade, and that says something important about our changing world.
This really ought to be a critical warning for everyone in this country, but especially our policymakers, that climate change is not something to be ignored. It's a really critical issue that we have to address as a country and as a world.
Some people did find ways to cool down today. If we want to stop Britain and the world getting even hotter, we're going to need to start cutting emissions, and quickly. Justin Rowlatt, BBC News, Cambridge.
Now, as we've heard, Scotland has experienced its hottest day on record, with the temperature reaching 34.8 degrees centigrade in Charter Hall in the Scottish borders. Our Scotland correspondent, Lorna Gordon, is in Coldingham Bay. And Lorna, this is quite a jump, isn't it, from the previous hottest temperature?
Yeah, it really is, George. You know, it's warm but comfortable by the sea this evening, but you don't have to go very far inland for the oppressive heat to hit. And as you said, the Met Office is reporting that just a few miles from here at Coldingham Charter Hall in the Scottish Borders, a new provisional maximum temperature for Scotland was reached earlier this afternoon, 34.8. That is nearly 2 degrees hotter than the previous record, which was set almost 20 years ago, also in the Scottish borders. Now, it's not those kind of huge temperatures you're seeing down in England, but this is a significant leap for Scotland. Further north, of course, it's remained in many of the areas in the north and in some of the islands quite balmy, quite cool today. But in those areas which have seen the heat here in Scotland, there's been some travel disruption, warnings to stay out of the midday sun, and of course to take care if you're out on the water.
Lorna, thank you very much. Now, thousands of people are without power in Yorkshire and Lincolnshire after the extreme temperatures over the last 2 days caused equipment to fail. Parts of Yorkshire have seen the temperature rising to 39 degrees centigrade and Newcastle Airport seeing a high of 37 degrees. Our correspondent Danny Savage reports from Selby in North Yorkshire to see how people are coping.
High noon in Selby. The hot air from North Africa reached far into northern England. It was 32 degrees already. Inside, the industrial fridge was doing its job, keeping everyone cool.
Some people enjoy the sun. It's like being on holiday in Spain for them, and they're coming in and enjoying it. But half the other people, oh, it's too hot, want to come in and cool off in here.
Round here, they put up signs to explain why their doors weren't open to welcome customers.
Staying during the day, plenty of fans on, all the curtains are closed.
Those with life experience thought it was all a bit too much.
So I think it's getting worse. It's not normal, isn't it, this kind of weather for England? It's not normal at all. Not like this.
On a neighbouring table, these two both had a night shift of sorts last night. One at a factory, one at the bedside.
Oh, that's really nice. It is. We do have fans around the factory, but it's still very hot. So we even had an ice cream van outside that they've paid for us. So.
In the middle of the night?
In the middle of the night. It was lovely.
I've got a 3-year-old and an 8-year-old who just 3 o'clock this morning they eventually fell asleep, both of them.
This primary school in the centre of Selby has decided to do things a bit differently today. They started earlier this morning and finished earlier as well, so it's lunchtime and they've already gone home. They just found conditions yesterday were too hot and knew it was going to be even hotter today. The consequences were more serious for some. The ambulance service had a busy day dealing with people with heat stroke. And as the afternoon wore on, like yesterday, fires broke out on dry grassland and heath. This blaze threatened homes near Wakefield. Luckily, the damage was contained to the gardens. The towns were hot, the countryside was baking. Thousands of people were left without power as electricity supplies failed. Gritters were deployed to treat melting roads with sand. And in the Yorkshire Dales, Aysgarth Falls, a popular beauty spot, ran dry. The consequences of this intense heat will be felt for some time. Danny Savage, BBC News, North Yorkshire.
Rail services have been heavily disrupted with no services in or out of London's King's Cross. Other train operators have also experienced disruption. The intense heat has led to some of the rail tracks buckling and overhead cables have also been affected. Our transport correspondent, Katie Austin, is at King's Cross station for us now. Katie, we did know there was going to be some disruption, but how bad has it actually turned out to be?
Well, the disruption has been pretty extensive. Some trains are running today across the country, but people have been told not to travel unless absolutely necessary. There are plenty of delays and cancellations around. And in some cases, for example, on routes heading north out of London today, passengers were simply told, do not travel. Now, this afternoon, all services in and out of London Euston Station were suspended after a fire by the tracks caused by overhead power lines coming down. And this afternoon, Avanti West Coast said it was stopping all services for the remainder of today. Other issues around the country have included buckled rails, signalling problems and other issues with the overhead power lines, because the temperatures today and yesterday have simply been higher than the rail network in its existing form was designed to cope with. And I'm told some disruption could continue into tomorrow morning. So again, passengers are told to check before they travel.
Katie, thank you very much. Well, it's not just the UK that has been facing sweltering temperatures. Western Europe has also seen a ferocious heatwave. Let's just take a look at some of the hotspots. In Spain, a top temperature of 39 degrees. Believe it or not, that's actually cooler than in recent days. Germany also saw a top temperature of 39 degrees. Belgium recorded 38 degrees. And in France, temperatures have reached a blistering 41 degrees. Our correspondent Lucy Williamson reports from Gironde in the southwest.
In Testebouche, we drove towards the fire, following fire crews as they disappeared into the smoke. All around us, the forest still smouldered, waiting for a chance to reignite.
You can really taste and smell the smoke in the air here. Fire crews have been battling these fires for a week now, and while they're contained in parts, they're still not under control despite the drop in temperatures. You can see some of them still working over here. The key concern now is preventing any fresh fires from taking hold.
They talk about an apocalypse here. Last week, it was paradise. These campsites carry evidence of both. Holiday memories spat out by the flames. The guests evacuated last week.
It's heartbreaking for the locals, for the tourists who come here. It's upsetting. And of course, us firemen feel the same way. But it just makes us more determined to finish the job.
A short drive away, Rachel has been packed for days. Her husband's old camper van stashed with water.
And then we've got a couple of baskets, and then we're going to bring in
anything irreplaceable, packed into a bag.
You could actually taste the smoke in your mouth. It was really disconcerting, this acrid taste, and there was ash falling from the sky. This situation is really scary. It's something that is so out of our control, and heat waves are happening more and more. We are surrounded by forest, and it's really something that's made us ask the question, you know, are we going to go back to England perhaps because of it? It's frightening.
Across the border in Spain, Angel Martín Arjona was caught on camera yesterday, heading out in his bulldozer to dig a fire break. Now you see him. Now you don't. It's the closest escape imaginable. This is what the apocalypse looks like up close. And this is what it looks like to survive it. Lucy Williamson, BBC News, Testebouche.
Well, with records broken and extreme weather becoming more and more likely, what does it all mean for the UK? You can watch the UK's hottest day, A New Normal, with BBC Weather's Nick Miller on BBC iPlayer now. That's at bbc.co.uk/iPlayer, or of course on the BBC iPlayer app. And the time is 18 minutes past 6. Our top story this evening. London Fire Brigade declares a major incident after record temperatures sparked fires across the south of England. Scotland too sees a new heatwave top temperature. And coming up, England's footballers prepare to take on Spain in tomorrow's quarter-final of the Women's Euros.
Coming up in Sports Day on the BBC News Channel, a farewell on home soil. Ben Stokes bows out of ODI cricket with a one-dayer in Durham and a warning for the game to not overuse their players.
Millions of public sector workers in England have found out what their pay rise will be after the government announced this year's pay deal. Unions had been calling for wages to reflect the rising cost of living, but ministers warned against pushing inflation even higher. According to today's announcement, teachers in England will receive a 5% pay boost, with the starting salary rising to £28,000 a year. That's outside London. Health workers in England will get a pay rise of at least £1,400 after they accepted the recommendations from the independent NHS pay review bodies. All police officers in England and Wales will get a £1,900 salary uplift from the 1st of September. Now, in a moment, our education editor Bramwell Jeffries will bring us the reaction from teachers. But first, here's our health editor Hugh Pym on how today's pay announcement has gone down amongst health workers.
A below-inflation wage award. The Royal College of Nursing telling Westminster it sees this as a pay cut. Ministers said they'd followed pay review body recommendations and that high wage rises would have a damaging outcome, but no minister was available for interview. Health staff, though, made plain their views.
If people understood what we do for them and for their relatives, people would understand why we're asking for above inflation.
Leanne is an intensive care nurse. She says people need to know the realities faced by those in her profession.
My job is to keep your relative alive so that they can come home to you and you can have a quality of life with your family. Why can't I have the same? I can't afford to have a child. I can't afford to buy a home. And this is not my hobby. This is my job, and I deserve a quality of life as well.
Debbie, who's from West Yorkshire, has been a paramedic for 30 years. She says that pay awards below inflation will drive people away from the NHS. She says the recent rising cost of fuel and bills is hurting.
It's not enough, nowhere near enough. You know, we need something that's going to address the cost of living and the inflation rises and actually give us a comfortable way of working and be able to live in between work. You know, we've gone through COVID and we've had to put up with all that, and we just feel this is a real slap in the face.
The government has said before it thinks inflation-busting pay rises will harm the economy. But NHS employers are concerned that they'll have to fund some of the pay awards from their own budgets. And health unions have made clear that their members will be consulted on further action, which could include strikes. Hugh Pym, BBC News.
A teacher just starting out and one who's taught for many years, now facing two different experiences of pay.
Right, super quiet, go and get oven gloves.
Experienced teachers like Julie are a big part of the workforce. Despite this 5%, she faces a real terms fall in the value of her pay. It follows many years of it falling behind prices.
Certainly the last few years, I don't think it's risen with the cost of living. Teaching is it's a really rewarding job. Everyone will tell you that, but it is a very, very demanding job. And do I think my pay reflects that? Probably not.
Guys, you should be writing the date and title, and you should be getting on with your stuff.
The numbers add up differently for new teachers like Anna.
18, so it's going to be £1.
Starting salaries are going up to £30,000 next year.
I was really, really thrilled to hear about that because I feel like we're kind of getting the recognition. I think with aspiring teachers who maybe are thinking about going in the profession and maybe thinking, oh, maybe if they're outweighing, you know, the vocational or the pay, I think now that kind of solidifies that. You know, I think that might make the minds of some of them. Excellent, well done, Anna.
This evening, the main education union said the offer wasn't enough. It will ask teachers to vote on industrial action.
We don't want to have to take industrial action. But when, on top of the very long series of pay cuts that we've had since 2010, which are already damaging teacher recruitment and retention, when the government proposes the biggest single real terms pay cut for generations, then unions have to act.
Schools have been trying to plan for pay increases. The 5% for most teachers is more than they were expecting. It has to come out of school budgets, also under pressure from rising bills.
Staffing as a whole accounts for over 85% of our entire costs year on year. And we're seeing energy increases, for example, of 89–90% plus, and that's a general trend across schools. That's causing significant pressure from outside the pay rise world.
Education unions say a below-inflation increase is an insult. The government says it's the most generous for years. Schools and parents could be caught in between. Bramwell Jeffries, BBC News, Sunderland.
So let's look at the implications of these pay deals. Our economics editor, Faisal Islam, is here. I wonder, what's the government's strategy behind these deals, Faisal?
Well, there's quite a lot going on here, George. And the big picture is, with inflation at 9 to 10%, the government's gone for sort of half of that, 4 to 5% on average. But as I say, there's some different things going on under the hood of that number. And that's more than the 2 to 3% that was originally indicated. But obviously, as we've been hearing, far less than the actual rate of inflation. And the government's argument is that they want to send a signal to the whole economy that those 9 to 10% inflation rates are freakish, they're not normal, shouldn't expect them, because once you start to expect them, they become self-fulfilling, and the long period, the high period of inflation will last for longer. Now, private sector earnings growth is about 5%, but when you throw in bonuses that are increasingly prevalent in the private sector, that's higher at 7%, so that's higher than some of the settlements we're seeing. Government's also not providing extra cash for this, as we've been hearing. Departments will have to find this from within budgets, and so this will leave many public sector workers with real cuts in income. But then there are changes. Lower paid public sector workers, constables in the police service, for example, are getting some settlements which are a bit closer to the inflation rate, 8-9%. Their chief of police officers, they're getting closer to 1%. But this is not just about generosity, it's about necessity, because it's an important calculation for the government just to get the staff that they need at a period when we have labour shortages. And some in the private sector, supermarkets, Amazon warehouses, they are paying and they're taking lower paid public staff away. So they've had to do this out of necessity. The question is whether it will prevent strikes.
All right, Faisal, thanks very much. Now to the Tory leadership race. In the latest round of voting among Tory MPs, Liz Truss has narrowed the gap with rival Penny Mordaunt. Former Chancellor Rishi Sunak again topped this afternoon MP's ballot. He received 118 votes. Penny Mordaunt received 92 nominations and Liz Truss 86. Kemi Badenoch is out of the race after coming last with 59 votes. Tomorrow, the three remaining candidates will be whittled down to two as MPs vote again. The BBC has announced it will broadcast a live hour-long TV debate with the last two candidates next Monday. That's at 9 p.m. From Westminster, our political editor Chris Mason reports.
The last scheduled meeting of Boris Johnson's senior ministers. The cameras invited in, but reporters not able to ask questions. And the Prime Minister keen to emphasise one of his government's key promises.
With temperatures setting records in this country, who can doubt that we were right to be the first major economy to go for net zero?
That is net zero carbon emissions by 2050. Some leadership contenders have questioned how that is achieved and at what cost.
Good afternoon. Nearly there.
The now familiar ritual of the man with the numbers in his pocket and the bad news for one of the candidates.
Kemi Badenoch is eliminated from the election. The remaining three candidates will proceed to a final ballot of the Parliamentary Party tomorrow.
Being knocked out was always likely for her today, but she had sounded upbeat on the way to work earlier.
Very excited. There is so much momentum. I'm doing well. There's all to play for because I'm the only change candidate left.
The change, though, is she's out, and now three candidates are chasing two golden tickets to the runoff decided by party members.
Are you going to get to the final two, Liz Truss?
The Foreign Secretary Liz Truss remains in third place, but is catching up.
Yes, I want Liz Truss to get through. I'm sorry for Kemi desperately. I think she's fantastic, but this is a really brutal business, and I believe her momentum is with Liz now.
Penny Mordaunt has been second in every round so far, but the only round that really counts is tomorrow's.
She just has to keep doing what she's doing, making a positive case. You know, we're running a clean campaign. She's got support from right across the party. She is so grateful to all colleagues who've come out to support her. And we just keep doing more of the same, keep making the case.
The front runner getting into the back seat remains the former Chancellor, Rishi Sunak.
He's going to be a Prime Minister who can hit the ground running. Rishi Sunak has that experience as Chancellor of the Exchequer. He has a renowned record on the economy when it comes to the furlough scheme and ensuring people have remained in work. And I think he provides the stability and certainty this country needs.
Boris Johnson turned up for the photo to capture the faces of his last cabinet today. How will this picture look in September? And who will be sitting in the middle? Well, whoever is sitting in the middle 7 weeks tonight will face colossal challenges. Disgruntled workers, as we've been hearing, spiralling prices. Does that diminish the appetite of the wannabes 1 iota, George? Not a bit of it. And right now, 358 Conservative MPs are being love-bombed and cajoled and persuaded, trying to join the campaign of one of the 3 wannabes still there. Now, as things stand, it looks like, unless he suffers a colossal lack of support in the last round, Rishi Sunak will get one of those golden tickets. But who will get the second one? Team Truss and Team Mordaunt fighting it out, slugging it out for the final votes. Team Truss optimistic they can do it, luring Kemi Badenoch's support towards them. The final realignment amongst MPs underway. The final vote here tomorrow.
Chris, thank you very much. England players have tried their best to keep cool as they prepare for their quarter-final against Spain in the Women's Euros tomorrow night. They wore ice vests after training in London as temperatures neared 40 degrees. Natalie Perks reports.
Beating the heat while the country sizzles. Training was earlier today with cooling wraps and ice vests used to regulate temperatures. Keeping an eager eye away.
Most of all, you talk about pressure all the time, and we talk about football. And football under the highest pressure against the best opponents we have in Europe. So what we're trying to do is just play football, play at our best, and try to use our strengths and trying to exploit the weaknesses of the opponent.
But as swashbuckling and ruthless as that performance was, Spain will be a step up in class. They might have lost a couple of players to injury, but they dominate possession. Patience will be key. But has the captain dared to dream beyond Spain to Wembley?
I've been dreaming about that since I was a kid, you know, those moments. But when you actually get into the tournament, it's quite easy to sort of block it out. And Wednesday, tomorrow, is the biggest game on the horizon. And after that, you know, we'll see where we are. And hopefully it'll be semi and then the final. So, yeah, it's easy to put to your back of your mind when you're here. But, yeah, it's definitely something I've been dreaming about all my life.
Record crowds, no goals conceded, 4 teams scored as England sauntered through to the quarter-finals. Tomorrow, though, well, the heat is really on. Natalie Perks, BBC News, Brighton.
Right, it's time for the all-important weather, and Ben Rich is here. Please tell us it is definitely going to cool down.
It is going to cool down, George, and I think for most that will be very good news because, of course, today we have broken a record. It's a record I don't think we wanted to break. 40.3 degrees in Lincolnshire today. That's the provisional temperature. And normally when we break records, it's by a fraction of a degree. This has broken the old record by more than 1.5 degrees. Not only that, according to the Met Office, so far it looks like 29 observing stations across England beat the old record today. And in Scotland, southern Scotland, we saw a new record for Scotland. But things are changing from the west, where we've seen some showers and thunderstorms pushing in already. Also, 1 or 2 thunderstorms could break out across parts of southeast Scotland and northeast England as we go through the evening. Now, we really do need some rain. We've seen that with all the fires we have burning. The rain will be quite showery, quite sporadic. Some places probably won't see any. Others will get some thunderstorms. But what the showers will do is start to introduce fresher conditions from the west. Still very warm across eastern areas as we start tomorrow morning. But as we go through the day, it is going to feel cooler and fresher. Cloud bringing some showers to start across parts of Wales and southwest England. Bit of rain perhaps for eastern and northern Scotland. The odd shower for Northern Ireland. There will be some spells of sunshine as well. But look at these temperatures, so much lower than they were today. 18, still 29 degrees in eastern England. Normally, we would call that hot. Now, as we go through the evening, we will see a scattering of showers and thunderstorms across some parts of central and eastern England. Again, quite sporadic. There won't be rain for everyone, but some of the showers could be quite intense. And if you are looking for rain, well, this isn't good news with high pressure building in. Yes, there will be some showers, but not the widespread rain that many of us need as we head through Thursday and Friday. But the good news is the heat, the real heat, is coming to an end. George.
Good to hear. Thanks, Ben. And that's the BBC's News at 6 on July the 19th. You can keep up with all the latest developments on the BBC website. From the 6 team, it is goodbye. The news continues here on BBC One, as now it's time to join our news colleagues across the nations and regions for the news where you are. Good night.